The sun was just beginning to slip behind the rooftops of the quiet suburban street, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. Juniper sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea, trying to push away the uneasy feeling that had been gnawing at her all week. Dominic, her husband of 35 years, had always been a man of secrets, but lately the secrecy felt different, more urgent, more dangerous. "Juniper, are you still working on that crossword?" Dominic's voice broke the silence. He leaned casually against the doorway, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips, though his eyes didn't quite reach hers. Juniper looked up, forcing a smile. "Just trying to keep my mind busy. Work's been exhausting." Dominic nodded, glancing at the clock. "You should rest. You've been stressed lately." It was a small, ordinary conversation, but something in the way he spoke, so careful, so measured, made Juniper's stomach tighten. She had learned over the years to read the pauses, the fleeting hesitations that betrayed the lies he hid beneath polite conversation. Later that evening, Juniper went through the mail. Bills, advertisements, and a plain brown envelope with no return address. Curious, she opened it. Inside were photographs, Polaroids of Dominic with a woman she had never seen, laughing as if decades apart from their own life together. And children. 2 small children, with the same dark eyes and strong jawline that Dominic possessed. Juniper's hands shook as she examined the photos. Her mind raced. Years of memories, of birthdays, anniversaries, quiet nights on the porch, clashed violently with the images in her hands. 35 years of marriage, and Dominic had kept an entire family hidden from her. The next morning, she confronted him. "Dominic," Juniper said, her voice steady but cold. "Who are they?" Dominic froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. He put it down slowly, his eyes narrowing. Juniper, I can explain." Juniper's lips pressed into a thin line. "You've been living a double life for decades. 2 children, another wife. How could you hide this from me?" Dominic swallowed hard. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't want you to find out. I thought I could manage it all quietly. I didn't want to hurt anyone." Juniper shook her head. "You've already hurt me, Dominic. You've built your entire life on lies, and I trusted you completely." The revelation hit her like a storm breaking over calm waters. Memories of laughter, late-night talks, shared dreams. They all felt tainted now, overlaid with the bitter realization that her life had been intertwined with deception. In the days that followed, Juniper couldn't sleep. Every glance at Dominic, every casual remark made her heart race. She started digging deeper, pulling at threads she hadn't noticed before. Credit card statements, old letters, phone records. Everything began to confirm her worst fears. Adriel, Dominic's longtime friend and business partner, had known. Alaya, Juniper's closest confidant, had warned her years ago to trust her instincts, yet even she had not imagined a betrayal of this scale. One night, Juniper found herself standing at the edge of the small balcony overlooking the backyard. The lights of the city twinkled in the distance, indifferent to the chaos in her life. Her hands gripped the railing as she whispered to herself, "How did I not see this coming?" Dominic approached quietly. "Juniper, I never wanted this to come out like this." "I thought I was protecting you." Juniper turned sharply, anger flashing in her eyes. "Protecting me? From the truth? You've destroyed everything we built together? Do you even understand what that means?" Dominic's face fell, his carefully constructed composure crumbling. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could manage both worlds, and it was wrong. I see that now." Juniper's breath came fast, her mind a whirlwind of betrayal and heartbreak. "You've lived a lie for 35 years. I don't even know who you are anymore." The house, once a sanctuary, now felt suffocating. The walls seemed to close in on her, echoing with every secret Dominic had kept, and in that moment, Juniper made a silent vow. The truth would not remain hidden. If Dominic had built a life on lies, she would tear it down piece by piece. Not out of revenge, but because she could no longer live in the shadow of deception. She went to bed that night with the photographs clutched tightly in her hand, staring at the ceiling as tears streamed down her face. Tomorrow, she thought, she would confront the world he had hidden, the children, the other life he had built. And Dominic would finally understand that the truth, once revealed, had the power to destroy even the most carefully constructed legacy. Because some secrets, once unearthed, could never be buried again. The morning after the confrontation, Juniper couldn't shake the heavy weight pressing on her chest. The photographs lay spread across the dining table, a tangible reminder of Dominic's decades-long deception. Every detail she had uncovered the night before kept replaying in her mind. The smiles of the children, the intimacy between Dominic and the mysterious woman, and the cold certainty that this secret life had existed parallel to her own. Dominic entered the kitchen, trying once again to offer a casual smile, but Juniper wasn't fooled. "Good morning," he said, his voice soft, almost pleading. Juniper's eyes remained fixed on the photographs. "Morning," she replied, deliberately flat. She didn't look at him, and that alone spoke volumes. He took a deep breath. "Juniper, I want to explain. Please." She finally turned to him, her gaze sharp. "Explain what, Dominic? How you managed to live a double life for 35 years without me ever noticing? How you built a whole family behind my back while I trusted you with everything?" Dominic ran a hand through his hair, the weight of guilt etched into every line of his face. "I didn't plan it. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could balance everything, keep my world separate. I see now how foolish that was." Juniper scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Foolish? Dominic, this isn't a mistake. This is a life built on lies. And now, I don't even know who you are anymore." Dominic looked down, shame flooding his expression. "You have every right to hate me. But please, before you make any decisions, hear me out." Juniper's hands tightened around the edge of the table. She wanted to shout, to demand the truth, but a part of her feared what she would uncover if she pushed too hard, too fast. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Who is she? What are their names? How could you keep this from me all these years?" Dominic hesitated, then spoke quietly, almost reluctantly. "Her name is Marissa. The children, they're Daniel and Lila. I never wanted you to know. I was trying to protect everyone, Marissa, the kids, you. But I see now that I've failed in every possible way." Juniper's stomach dropped. Daniel and Lila, names that would haunt her from this moment forward. Every memory of her life with Dominic suddenly felt like a fragile facade, one that could shatter at any moment. "Protect us?" she repeated, incredulous. "Dominic, do you understand what this means? You've lived a lie for 35 years. Every shared holiday, every birthday, every quiet night at home. Was that all fake? Was I just pretending to be married to someone who wasn't even fully mine?" Dominic reached out, but Juniper stepped back. "Please don't touch me," she said firmly. "I need space." She retreated to the guest room, the photographs clutched tightly in her hands. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she allowed herself to cry, the tears mixing with the simmering anger that burned in her chest. Dominic's betrayal was not just about a secret family. It was about the foundation of her entire life being ripped away piece by piece. Hours later, Juniper's best friend Aliyah called. "Juniper, are you okay?" she asked, her voice cautious, aware of the gravity of the situation. Juniper hesitated, then whispered, "I found something I can't unsee. Dominic, he has another family. 35 years, Aliyah. 35 years? Elia's voice dropped. Oh my God, Juniper, I didn't know. I suspected, but this... She trailed off. I don't know what to do, Juniper admitted. I can't just pretend this isn't real. And I can't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe never. But I can't let him think he can hide this forever. The truth, it has to come out. Meanwhile, Dominic sat alone in the living room, staring at the floor. His mind raced, wondering how he had miscalculated so badly. He had always thought secrecy was protection, but now he realized it was destruction. He had underestimated Juniper's intuition, her attention to detail, and the sheer force of her determination. The tension between them was palpable, unspoken, yet suffocating. Every shared glance, every word spoken between them, carried the weight of a decades-long lie. Juniper had made her decision. She would confront the reality of Dominic's other life, piece by piece, uncovering every hidden truth, no matter how painful. That evening, Juniper finally picked up the phone. She needed answers, direct, undeniable answers. Dominic, I need you to tell me everything, she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Dominic nodded slowly. I'll tell you everything, every detail. You deserve that much, at least. Juniper hung up and looked out the window at the darkening sky. The world outside continued its indifferent rhythm, oblivious to the chaos within her home. But she didn't care. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't just uncovering Dominic's lies, she was reclaiming her own life. And no secret, no matter how carefully buried, could stand in her way. The next days would bring more revelations, more heartbreak, and more confrontations. But Juniper knew one thing. The moment she chose to face the truth, nothing would ever be the same again. The game had begun, and Dominic would learn that a life built on lies could collapse faster than anyone ever imagined. The following morning, Juniper awoke to a quiet house, the kind of silence that felt heavier than any argument. Dominic had retreated to his study, and she knew he was preparing for the inevitable, the confrontation she had promised. But Juniper's mind was already racing ahead, imagining the world he had hidden for decades. She decided she couldn't wait for Dominic to volunteer information. The photographs in her hand were not enough. She needed names, addresses, dates, proof beyond any doubt. She sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. A plan began to form. She would track down Marissa, Daniel, and Lila. She would see for herself the other life Dominic had been living, and she would finally understand the full scope of his betrayal. Meanwhile, Dominic paced in his study, the weight of his secret pressing down on him. He had spent years compartmentalizing his life, shielding Juniper from the reality of Marissa and the children. But now, every decision, every lie seemed to press down on him like a boulder. He knew Juniper would dig deeper. He had underestimated her strength, her intelligence. Juniper is relentless, Dominic muttered to himself. She'll find everything eventually. Maybe it's better if I tell her everything before she does. But telling the truth felt impossible. How could he condense 35 years of secrecy into words without shattering the fragile remnants of trust they still had? And yet, he knew he had no choice. By mid-morning, Juniper had pieced together what little information she could find online. Names, old addresses, social media profiles, everything confirmed her fears. Marissa was real, Daniel and Lila were real, and Dominic's double life was more extensive than she had imagined. Her heart pounded as she stared at a photograph of Marissa on her social media page, the same warm smile that had been captured in the photographs she had found. She hesitated. Should she confront Marissa directly, or should she wait for Dominic to explain? The temptation to speak to Marissa was strong. She needed answers, but she also knew that confronting her could create more chaos, more heartbreak. As Juniper wrestled with her thoughts, Dominic finally joined her in the living room. Juniper, I know what you're thinking, he said quietly. You want to speak to them. I can arrange it, but you have to understand it's not simple. They've been living their lives, unaware that this world exists. I've tried to protect them too. Juniper's eyes blazed with determination. Protect them? Or protect yourself? You've hidden them for decades while I lived a lie. It's time for the truth, Dominic. I need to see them. I need to understand. Dominic nodded reluctantly. I'll arrange it. But be prepared. What you learn may change everything. Not just how you see me, but how you see our entire life together. Juniper didn't flinch. I'm ready. By the next day, Dominic had reluctantly called Marissa, carefully choosing his words to avoid alarming her. He explained that Juniper had discovered everything, that she needed to understand the reality of his secret life. Marissa was hesitant at first, her voice tight with disbelief. You're saying, after all these years, she knows? Yes, Dominic replied, his voice low. I can't hide it anymore. You need to meet her. Juniper needs answers. I'll make sure the meeting is neutral, safe, and calm. Marissa agreed, albeit nervously. She arranged for Juniper to meet her and the children at a local cafe, a neutral place where no one would feel cornered. Juniper spent the morning preparing herself, emotions swirling like a storm inside her. Anger, grief, disbelief, and a small flicker of curiosity. She had to see this hidden family to fully grasp the magnitude of Dominic's betrayal. When she arrived at the cafe, Juniper felt a strange mix of dread and determination. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, scanning the room. There, at a corner table, sat Marissa with Daniel and Lila. The resemblance to Dominic was undeniable. Daniel's sharp jawline, Lila's dark, expressive eyes. Juniper's chest tightened. Marissa stood to greet her, extending a hand. Juniper, thank you for coming, she said carefully. Her voice was calm, measured, but there was an underlying tension, a fear of the unknown. Juniper nodded. I need answers, she said simply. I need to understand everything. The children shifted in their seats, curiosity and wariness in their eyes. Juniper realized the gravity of the situation. This was not just about her betrayal, but the impact on innocent lives. For the first time, the full weight of Dominic's deception hit her. Marissa gestured to the children. They need to hear from you too, Dominic, but not here. Let's start with the basics. Let's talk about the past, the decisions, the reasons, everything. Juniper took a deep breath. The storm she had unleashed was only beginning. 35 years of secrets were unraveling in front of her eyes, and there was no turning back. She looked across the table at Marissa, then at Daniel and Lila, and whispered to herself, It's time for the truth to come out fully at no matter the cost. The air in the cafe was thick with tension. Juniper sat across from Marissa, Daniel, and Lila, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. She could feel every heartbeat echoing in her chest. Dominic had stayed outside, pacing in his car, giving them the space to speak. But Juniper knew he was listening, waiting, fearing the fallout. Marissa took a deep breath, her eyes softening as she looked at Juniper. I know this isn't easy, she said quietly. I didn't know you existed either, Juniper. Dominic never told me. We, Daniel and Lila, were just living our lives, unaware of the other world he had. Juniper's throat tightened. Do you have any idea what it's like to discover your husband of 35 years has another family? To find out everything you believed was true was a lie? Marissa flinched, but nodded. I can imagine, and I'm sorry. I didn't want this either. He never wanted us to hurt you, but I see now that he hurt all of us. Lila, sitting quietly, looked at Juniper with cautious curiosity. Mom, who is she? She asked softly, her voice tentative. Juniper forced a small smile, swallowing the lump in her throat. I'm your stepmother, I suppose. Though Dominic never told me about you. I'm Juniper." Daniel's eyes were sharp, mirroring Dominic's own intensity. "So this has been going on for years?" he asked, voice edged with disbelief. "All this time he never told anyone?" Juniper nodded. "Yes, for 35 years. And now I'm trying to understand why." The conversation was heavy, each word carrying the weight of decades of lies. Juniper asked questions carefully, trying not to overwhelm the children, while Marissa filled in pieces of the past. Slowly, the story emerged. Dominic had built 2 lives, compartmentalized and carefully hidden. The secrecy had been deliberate, calculated, but not without consequences. As the cafe clock ticked, Juniper realized the complexity of the situation. Dominic's deception had not only shattered her world, but it had also affected everyone he loved. She could see the fear and confusion in the children and the cautious sadness in Marissa's eyes. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Juniper asked Marissa finally, her voice a mixture of anger and curiosity. Marissa's gaze dropped. "I didn't want to destroy your marriage. I thought Dominic would eventually figure out how to tell you, but I didn't know how. And now everything is out. And I wish things were different." Juniper's mind raced. She understood now that Dominic's lies were not just about betrayal, they were about control, about fear of losing everything. But understanding didn't make the pain any less real. She felt torn between her anger at Dominic and a growing sense of responsibility toward Marissa and the children. Meanwhile, Dominic waited outside, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He had imagined this moment countless times, yet nothing had prepared him for the reality of seeing his worlds collide. He knew that whatever happened inside the cafe would define the rest of his life. His carefully constructed legacy was crumbling before his eyes, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Inside, Juniper finally stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. "I need to see him," she said. Marissa nodded reluctantly. The children shifted, unsure of what to expect, but they followed quietly. Dominic opened the door, stepping into the cafe with a mix of apprehension and guilt. His eyes met Juniper's, and he saw in her gaze the full force of her discovery, the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the simmering anger that had been building for decades. "Juniper," he began, his voice almost breaking. "Don't," Juniper interrupted sharply. "I need you to listen, not speak. I've spent 35 years trusting you, believing in the life we built. And now I know it was all built on lies. Every smile, every promise, every quiet night together. It was part of a double life that you orchestrated. I trusted you completely, Dominic, and you destroyed that trust." Dominic swallowed hard, his mouth dry. "I never meant to hurt you. Anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing." Juniper shook her head. "Doing the right thing? Protecting some people while destroying others? That's not protection. That's cowardice. And now we're all living with the consequences of your choices." Marissa stepped forward. "We didn't know. We weren't trying to hurt anyone." Juniper turned to her, softening slightly. "I know. And that is why I need you to help me understand everything, so we can all navigate the truth together. But Dominic, you need to understand that nothing will ever be the same. Your lies have consequences, and we're going to face them all together." Dominic nodded, his expression a mixture of shame and resignation. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." For the first time in decades, Juniper felt a sense of clarity amidst the chaos. She had uncovered the truth, confronted the hidden family, and forced Dominic to face the reality of his actions. But she also knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges, hearts to heal, trust to rebuild, and the relentless shadow of the lies Dominic had lived. As they left the cafe, walking together into the late afternoon sunlight, Juniper realized something profound. The truth was devastating, yes, but it also had the power to free them. and she was ready to see how far that truth could take them. The storm that Juniper had unleashed over the past weeks now reached its peak. Dominic's carefully constructed life, built over decades of secrecy, was collapsing all at once. The cafe meeting had set the stage. Marissa, Daniel, and Lila had seen Juniper, and the truth could no longer be hidden. Every lie, every omission had caught up with him, and the fallout was unstoppable. Juniper sat in her living room, photographs and notes spread across the coffee table. Her hands trembled slightly, but her mind was sharper than ever. She had tracked every secret, pieced together every hidden transaction, and she knew the moment had come to confront Dominic fully, not just in private, but with consequences he could not ignore. Dominic entered the room cautiously. "Juniper," he began, his voice low, weary. Juniper stood, her eyes blazing. "No more excuses, Dominic. I've confronted the hidden family. I've seen Marissa, Daniel, and Lila. I know everything. And now, it's time for you to face the consequences of living a life built entirely on lies." Dominic's face fell, but he nodded slowly. "I understand. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just didn't know how to fix it." Juniper shook her head. "Fix it? Dominic, this isn't about fixing. This is about reckoning. 35 years of lies, betrayal, and deception cannot be erased, but they can be confronted, and they must be." She handed him a folder filled with evidence, financial records, letters, emails, photographs, proof of every hidden transaction, every meeting, every carefully concealed detail of his double life. Dominic flipped through it silently, each page a hammer blow to the life he had thought secure. Marissa's voice broke the tense silence as she spoke from the doorway. "We've already lived in the shadows of his lies, but now, Juniper, you've made it real." Dominic has to answer, not just to you, but to all of us. Lila and Daniel sat quietly, watching Dominic. Their expressions were a mixture of hurt, confusion, and cautious curiosity. For them, Dominic's betrayal was a revelation of the man they thought they knew, and a reminder that trust once broken was nearly impossible to repair. Juniper took a deep breath, her voice firm. "Dominic, I'm not asking for apologies. I'm demanding accountability. You've destroyed the foundation of trust in my life, and it's your responsibility to rebuild it or watch it crumble completely." Dominic looked up, his eyes glistening. I don't know if I can ever make this right, but I'll do anything to repair what I've broken." "Actions speak louder than words," Juniper said sharply. "And your actions have consequences. We're all affected by your choices. You owe Marissa, you owe the children, and you owe me the truth. Not hidden behind lies, not half-told. The whole truth." Dominic nodded solemnly. "I'll tell everything. No more secrets. I promise." Juniper glanced at Marissa and the children. "We need time, but we also need honesty. From this day forward, there can be no more shadows, no more hidden lives. If you cannot live in the light, Dominic, then perhaps it's time to face the collapse of everything you've built." The room fell silent, each person absorbing the weight of what was happening. Dominic realized that the comfort of his secret life had evaporated. There were no more hidden corners, no more excuses, no more lies to protect him. Every relationship he had nurtured in secrecy was now under scrutiny, and the trust he had taken for granted was shattered beyond repair. Juniper finally exhaled, a mix of relief and lingering anger. She had taken control of the situation. She had forced the truth into the open, confronted Dominic's hidden family, and demanded accountability. The journey had been painful, exhausting, and emotional, but it was necessary. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow through the windows. It was a symbol, Juniper thought, of endings and new beginnings. The past could not be erased, but facing it head-on gave them all a chance to rebuild, on honesty, transparency, and mutual understanding. Dominic sank into a chair, staring down at the evidence laid before him. He realized that his legacy, once built on lies and secrecy, was gone. What remained was a chance, a slim, fragile chance, to live truthfully, to repair relationships, and to earn back some measure of trust, if it was even possible. Juniper, standing tall, knew that the journey ahead would be challenging. But she also knew that she had reclaimed her power, confronted betrayal, and ensured that the truth, no matter how devastating, had the final word. In that moment, the silence was no longer oppressive. It was a promise of clarity, of honesty, and of consequences faced openly. The secrets that had once threatened to define their lives had been exposed, and the real work, healing, understanding, and rebuilding, could finally begin. Because some truths, once uncovered, had the power not only to destroy, but to free those brave enough to face them.